All I know is get it. The OGs always told me what I start, I gotta finish. So I push it to the limit, so I can be the greatest. So I can look my family in their eyes and say we made it. Don't let life hand you nothing, you just gotta go take it. Always keep it 100, don't ever let me catch you faking. Keep a close eye on your circle.
Hey y'all, it's your guy Darryl Riley, businessman and entrepreneur and host of the Post Prison Podcast. Joining us today is my dear friend and sister and co-host, Miss Cynthia Brady, and our special guest, Miss Sarah Borden, owner of the Ride or Die Salon. So just a little housekeeping like we normally do when we get to this space. I just want to thank you to the team and everybody that's putting in time to help us get this together. No matter how small, none of it's insignificant. It takes a lot to get this moving, and I just thank everybody for their input. I also want to thank you to Ride or Die for having us. You know, we appreciate your space. I've heard it said often how much of a cool vibe this is, you know, and I totally agree. You know, it's a good place to fall asleep in. So, like we always do, again, we want to talk about the things that we're not here to do. We aren't here to argue. We aren't here to disparage. We aren't here to criticize folks. We're probably here to criticize systems, but not people. We're just here to uplift and inspire. And also today we're going to move in a little different direction. We kind of set the groundwork of why this space is necessary and the value of it. And today we want to come from a more authentic space. That includes myself and Cynthia and Miss Borden to talk about our struggles and how we got to these spaces. That's not to glorify any of our wrongs, because we do know in the midst of some of our issues, we made some bad decisions that we had to take responsibility and accountability for. But that's why we're here today. Our guest, Miss Sarah Borden, I felt compelled to invite her on to talk with us in this particular space because when she first got out, she reached out to me. I didn't know her, I had never met her, and she had heard something about me or read a story or something, and I was trying to get to a different space in my life, and I guess it inspired her enough to reach out to me, and she did. And we talked, and she told me about the things that she wanted to do, and I didn't really do nothing. I just encouraged her, let her know I was there, for whatever she needed. And she took off. She took off, and that was like 3 years ago. And I mean, she's doing the most around here. I'm very proud. I'm actually inspired now. I'm not the one doing the inspiring. So it's cool how that situation has, come full circle. So I just needed to tell you how inspired I am. Again, in our initial show, we talked about how there are over 2 million people incarcerated in federal jails and prisons in the United States, and that there's another 250,000 on parole or probation. So that's almost 2.5 million people that are locked up right now or confined in some capacity. And we used to be a part of those statistics, right? Yeah. And for me, I remember I've been to prison in 2 states. And I remember the DOC numbers for both places. I remember that slave number, So with that said, we're gonna lead off with Sister Cynthia because she has a different perspective about her DOC number, and she can choose to share that if she doesn't. But my question to you, Cynthia, is a lot of times something triggered us, or an event happened in our life that just sent everything straight to the left, right? Or a culmination of things, right? If you could put your finger on one particular situation or circumstances that kind of shape your life in terms of that connection to criminality, if you will, what would
that be? Ooh. That's a deep question. It was a lot of dynamics. I grew up in the Tri-Cities, and I grew up around a lot of dope, a lot of activities surrounding drugs, and not necessarily in the homes, because I spent a lot of time with my grandparents and stuff, like my grandparents, great grandparents and stuff like that. And so I didn't really just personally like witness people like using drugs as far as relatives necessarily, but I seen people like at houses nodding, and then I figured out what it was they was doing, or I would hear people talking about it. And but when I was younger, I got stabbed when I was like 13 or 14 years old. I got stabbed, and I remember going to the hospital in an ambulance. They took me to the hospital, and they kept me like on painkillers from the age of like, I don't know, it probably was months. You know what I'm saying? Like I was on there for months, and had to learn how to walk all over again and everything, because the night that I got stabbed, my intestines and everything was hanging out on the ground, and they had to get me up, and it was just crazy. It was a crazy night. And I remember waking up in the hospital, and my mom standing over me, and I'm looking at her, and she just had this really weird look on her face, and I'm telling her, I'm saying, Mom, look, I said, I'm gonna be all right. I'm gonna be all right. And she's like, okay. And I could tell she was really hurt by what had happened and stuff. But I remember when she got me up out of that hospital and everything, I was on them pills, and I didn't go back to school for a long time. I remember not going back to school, so I was at home on pills, on drugs. Had to learn how to eat again, had to learn all that different stuff, how to walk again, all that. And after that, I think the time just spinning, tripping in my mind about what happened to me and all those different things, I started reaching out to different people, smoking weed. I had relatives that sold weed, and I started hustling, selling a little weed here and there so I could keep up with my little habit. Right. You know, I was smoking cigarettes, so I started braiding hair and doing little stuff to keep up with my cigarette habit. And they say, you know, I'm drinking. You know, the environment was a little crazy too, because my mom was a single parent, and she was trying to raise us the best she could, you know, by herself. My dad, he lived on the west side, and he had remarried and stuff. And so it was really difficult for her. And I think that when I look back over things, I think that a lot of black women that were single parents, they were stressed out. They didn't know how to handle that situation. They got 4 or 5 kids in the household they got to feed, and they doing the best they can. And so most of the time they party, you know, for relief. And I remember my mom even waking me up to come dance and show people, because I was a good dancer, and show people how to dance. Out, and after they all pass out, I'm sipping and tipping, you know what I'm saying, getting a drink here and there. But I moved up here when I was younger, up here from the Tri-Cities up here to Bremerton. And I remember going to different places, hanging out with different friends around here that I met up with, and they was drinking there or smoking there, and I just joined in with it. And then it just became exclusive after somebody introduced me to crack cocaine, and I will not mention their names, but then it got really deep. At first I didn't like it. The first time I used it, I didn't like it. But then they called me back over to the house, and I used it again. And when I used it that time, I think I took some Valium or something, and it kicked in like bam. Like, this is what everybody is doing. And I got really into that, and it and my thing, instead of me like doing other things to make money, like stealing, robbing, hitting people head, didn't have to make money, I didn't want to go that route. So I mean, I did still have some type of morals and stuff that was instilled in me. So one of the things that I did do was I sold drugs. Yeah. And so I got really heavy into that. I ended up getting in trouble a few times where I know the police really didn't have no case, but I just pled guilty because I didn't want it to, I just didn't have time for all of that. Absolutely. And they started building cases, and the last one was that I went to prison, well, the one that I went to prison in 2002 was, they gave me that 11 years and 8 months, 8.5 months. But for some reason or other, being in jail, I was praying and everything, and God has shown me, you're not gonna go do that type of time. You'll be out in about 20 months or less. I had already exposed me to that in there because I fast and I prayed while I was up in there. And I remember going to court and my daughter was like, Mom, and she was crying and stuff, but she was like, they just don't know your heart. They don't know what type of person you is. I said, baby, don't worry about it. I'm not getting ready to go do that kind of time. And I went up in there. People were kept on trying to tell me, go on and settle in. You gonna do that time? I said, no, I'm not. I'll be out of here. And in 19 months, I was out of there. But I've seen this thing with drugs, like run through a community, mess up a family, tear up a town, do all types of different stuff. And you know, I hear a lot of people say stuff about addicts, but what they really don't understand is that addicts is just people that have lost their way and they're masking what they're going through emotionally with using substances. That's all that is.
You alluded to that in when you said one thing about it. I wasn't the type of person to go rob and steal. I still have some ethics about me.
Yes.
And I think that's one of the ways you and I connected. We know we could always keep it real.
Absolutely.
And another thing, you know, that people don't understand about drugs, for those that use them or get involved in them, we all use or get addicted to something for the same reason. Whether it's drugs, alcohol, sex, porn, a relationship, a person, it's for the same reason. And that is simply to feel different.
Yeah.
You know, and like you say, my mom had 5 brothers and they was all hustlers in the street, but we were kind of sheltered from all of that. And, you know, still had those adverse childhood experiences they talk about, those ACEs.
Absolutely.
We had a lot of those growing up divorced and, you know, watching my parents fight and not having emotional intelligence to talk out their issues. But anyway, I remember when my parents had broke up for the final time, I guess it was, and I was like 16. I think I was 16, you know, and I had got in trouble that summer. I won't get into what that was for. It was some BS, but it was one of those, you know, things where we over-prosecute young black faces as opposed to white faces. We talked about that when Darryl was on. But I remember that summer we was playing, you know, with the church band, playing my little horn and stuff, and Johnny was the cool guy in the church. Johnny was a player, you know what I mean? And Johnny took me up north with him. We called his little Datsun, I'll never forget it, little Datsun car. And we drove up Lakeshore Drive, man, to this house up north, and he took me in there, and it was like 3 white girls in there. And they all in their panties and bra. And I'm like 16. And they in there doing a little chemical experiment, right? And this is like 1980, 1981, something like that. And the girl took the hanger and took the stuff out the tube and put it on the pipe. And Johnny said, go ahead and try it, man. And she gave it to me. And it was on from there. I didn't know what I was experiencing. I didn't know what it was doing to my system. And I won't go through the processes of all of that right here in this space, but I'll just tell you that the last time I used crack, I was 40. So from 40 to 16, I spent all that time trying to catch that first hit that I got at 16.
Yeah.
Chasing it the whole time. People that know me, I wasn't a bum when I was smoking crack. I was having a lot of money. But I would go from selling keys to can I have a bag please in 2 weeks. Because of the cycle of addiction was so strong. I was driven by the addiction.
Yeah.
You know, I was driven by that. I wasn't driven by to hurt nobody. I wasn't feared for a prison. I wasn't feared for anything. But that stuff took a hold of my soul.
Absolutely.
When I moved to Washington, I thought that I only packed my clothes. But as soon as the pressure got to me and my struggles got real, I realized and I panicked. And I realized I looked in my suitcase and my habit was in there. You know, so I brought all of that with me to Washington, and it leads to the same thing. It leads to trouble. You know, but today is different. You know, and I can look back on those things, and I don't have those same struggles. I know that's why we're here today, because of those spaces that we've been in. You know, sometimes I was so high, right? Like high. It's like you're looking down on the earth, and you can see the people way down there. You know what I'm saying? I done been just that high.
Yeah.
And now sometimes in life when things happen, when situations show up and I know drugs are involved or it's some mess involved, it's like I can see it from that same space that I used to be hiding.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a blessing and a curse, man.
Yeah, because anything that can break you can make you.
Yeah, so Sarah, again, you know, it's like you've been it's like you took the elevator to the penthouse. You didn't have to take the stairs. And I'm really excited and proud of you. Tell us a little bit about yourself and where you at and your start in this space and, you know, where we at to today.
Yeah. So I'm born and raised Bremerton my whole life. I come from a drug-filled family. My mom and dad both used and sold drugs my whole life. Everything I only knew. So all I ever wanted was their attention growing up. So I would get in trouble, get suspended, get expelled. And I knew by the age of 12 I wanted to do every drug before I was 15. It was my mission. I wanted to be able to give all the information on all these drugs to tell everybody because I wanted to be the know-it-all. I wanted to be everybody's first time. I wanted to be the person at the party that had everything. And then it just grew from there. And then my mom, she got cancer when I was 13, and my uncle, so they both got prescribed medication, and that's kind of where I got my first big amount of money. And I wanted to be just like my parents. My mom sold drugs and had a really great name on the street, so I wanted the same credibility and respect as she had, but I wanted it in a different way with a different drug, and I wanted people to respect and love me as they did her. And so that was definitely the start of my hustle. And of course, addiction took a hold of me, and I wanted more, and I used everything. I went all the way down, all the way up, all the way down, all the way back up again until I got caught. And me and my dad had got arrested together after my mom had passed away. And he got clean, and I didn't. For 3 years, he'd get down on his knees, he'd cry every day, he'd say, God, take her. And it just wasn't enough for me until I racked up all these charges and I got brought into a program, a drug court program that I tried to do great for 11 months, but I still wanted to sell drugs while staying clean. So I was living in an Oxford house, selling drugs, chairing meetings, doing all these great things. Wow. And I felt like I was 1 foot in and 1 foot out the whole time. So I ended up getting caught. I ended up going to prison and spending 3 years there. But in the beginning of my sentence, I found out I was pregnant. And I never knew I could have kids because of how reckless I was on the streets. I slept with anybody, I did anything, I didn't take care of myself, so I just knew I wasn't meant to have children. And then I found out I was pregnant. So because of the prison system, they didn't give me an ultrasound for 2 months. By the time they did, I found out that I had a tubal pregnancy. So they had to remove my right fallopian tube and ovary, and I had to undergo surgery while in prison. So when I woke up from the surgery is when I knew that was my time of surrender, that if I ever wanted a fighting chance at having a family, I would have to stay clean, starting today. And so I did. Because if I would have had that baby, it was my intention that I was gonna take the baby, have it go to my baby's dad on the weekend, be in the baby program, and he was gonna put drugs in the baby's diaper. And I wanted to sell drugs in prison because it manifested so bad and so deep. And so losing the baby saved my life. In prison, I braided everybody's hair, I styled everybody's hair, I was in the horticulture program, I had no idea I was gonna be here today, nor did I think I could obtain this. I wanted, when I got out, I learned so many things in prison. I never knew how to do my laundry, I didn't know how to cook, I didn't know how to clean. My parents were tweakers, they did everything for me. So when I got out of prison, I thought, I'm gonna just work at a restaurant and be a line cook. And I did, and I was working 3 jobs at the same time. And I just passed by the college one day and I was like, this is my moment. Why not just go to cosmetology school? And I was scared because I was like, wait, can felons even be barbers and cosmetologists? And then miraculously your name popped up on my feed and someone said, hey, reach out to him, he went to prison too. And that's where I got a hold of you that day, and you're like, no, it's possible.
Yeah.
And so ever since then, I just, grinded it out. I took the ferry every day. I went to school. I woke up at 4 in the morning. I got to school. I came home at 7 at night. I did hair till 11 at night. And then I go back to school at 4 in the morning. So my same hustle that came from the street applied to today.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then now we are here.
You know what? I'm even more inspired now because of the richness and the deepness of your struggles. You know, a lot of that stuff would have killed people. I will say what I am seeing is a consistent theme between the three of us that I never really took into account. And we'll talk about that in any question. But what that consistent theme is, we got down in the mud and got it. She talked about how she worked 3 jobs. I worked as a dishwasher, I worked at Popeyes, I cut lawns on the weekend, and I cut hair in the barbershop, and I went to barber school, all at the same time for like 2 years. You talking about all the things that you've done. So, when we get to the discussion about what it takes for the person that's continued going through recidivism, we gotta talk about that accountability piece too, because that's important. But the next question I have for the both of you, and you alluded to it a little bit, but it's much deeper than that because you've seen a lot worse times that you didn't flip for. But can you pinpoint the paradigm shift? Can you pinpoint something that said, damn, I can't keep sleeping on myself no more? Was there a particular moment for you? And more than likely, because for me, that moment occurred in prison. It did, where I had time to sit down and be with myself.
Well, see, I can't even say that because I got out and I did good for like 4 years. I was working I was doing respiratory care. I was working in Ross. I'd go out Ross door and go into the Avenue and work. I mean, and then on the weekends I was going to this lady's house and taking care of her, doing respiratory care. She had MS. And I mean, I stayed busy. That was the main thing, I stayed busy. And in church, I was in church all the time. So I basically got myself in a situation where I didn't have any free time to slip or mess up. Mm-hmm. And I ran that for 4 years. And then I turned around and somebody started chasing me. A man started chasing me, got out of work release. And I hooked up with him.
Blame the man.
Eventually, no, it wasn't his fault. It's my fault because I should have been more aware that this is not going to work for me. Because this man had tried to talk to me before I had went to prison, and I wouldn't give him the time of day. I don't know what made me give him time of day after that.
That's another podcast.
Yeah, another, yeah. But in any event, I did good for like 4 years. And then I messed around and came back over here with him. And he was, running and gunning and doing his thing. And he almost got caught up. And I remember him handing me his stuff and said, "Can you put this up for me?" And I said, "Yeah, I put it up for him." Because he had got pulled over. And then I thought about it later on, and I was like, damn, you taking a lot of chances. You might as well be doing what you used to do.
Why not?
And so eventually I ended up back. They say if you keep going to the barbershop, eventually you're going to get your hair cut. I kept hanging out at spots with him and doing shit with him and ended up back smoking on the low because I'm holding his shit, remember?
Right.
And eventually I'm going to make me a pipe and I'm going to do my own thing, And eventually I ended up back doing the same shit. I got my own apartment. A friend of mine helped me get an apartment on the east side. I got my own apartment and everything. And I was like still a little mild-mannered with it or whatever. But then I was introduced to even shit heavier than the crack cocaine I was smoking. I started getting introduced into the heroin world. And I was running and gunning with people that was doing heroin. And that's a whole different set of people.
Yeah.
And I found myself in really big trouble then. And the day that the police kicked my door in, I remember that my door got kicked in. I had just got out the bathtub. And they kept trying to talk to me to get me to tell on somebody. And I was like, I'm tired. Just take me to jail. I just want to go to jail so I can go to sleep. Leave me alone type shit. And when I get to the jail or whatever, they still trying to ask me questions. I told you already. I just want to get some rest. when I woke up and stuff, I thought about it and everything, and I got bailed out, and I said I wasn't going back to using it. I got bailed out the same day I got bailed out. I called somebody looking for stuff, and went to the hotel where they was at, and found out the police was watching. Didn't know the police was watching, and I ended up jumping in the truck I was driving, and the police chased me to this up here. Chased me up the street here on 8th Street and to a friend's house that I used to stay with, and chased me and ran up in there and took me back to jail. Wow. And when they took me back to jail, they was trying to accuse me of some drugs they found, they said, on the ground or whatever. But they had pulled all these different people out of the house before I came out the house, you know? And I said, wait a minute, you're not gonna put that on me. You know what I'm saying? You didn't see me with nothing.
Well, how about I frame it this way?
Listen, let me finish. So when at that time when I went to jail, I said, God is trying to tell me something. And I'm done. And what I did was, while I was in there, I wrote the drug program and asked them about getting into drug court. And that was what basically bought me out. And while I was in drug court, I stayed clean and sober the whole time. They gave me some UAs that said that they were dirty UAs, and I wasn't using. I ended up going to the hospital and having some blood work done, a UA and everything, because I wasn't using drugs, and I was wondering, why is my UAs coming back dirty? I've been clean and I've been sitting in jail all this time. My blood work and everything came back good from the hospital, you know, and I acted an ass with the judge and started talking crazy, and he sent me, they sent me to a long-term treatment program over in Seattle, Cedron. And I went out there and I graduated from there in 7.5 months. It's an 18-month program. They even told me, we knew you was clean because of, you know, how I was moving. Like getting up early in the morning. I was the head of sisters. I worked at the recycle center. I was getting the sisters up, making sure they made up their beds, checking the rooms, doing all that. They said, you're too far advanced in your recovery to not, you know, to even go through this, the whole 18 months, yeah. And they ended up graduating me in 7.5 months, and I got out and I went back to drug court and I graduated from there. But I had promised myself the night that they really had kicked the door in, I had prayed and said before that, any means necessary, Lord, I want out. And it's ironic because that same house, you came to visit me and you was doing really, really good. And me and you talked and you kept saying, you was with a crazy lady, and she kept thinking me and you was messing around, and she acted a donkey outside of my house. And you said that is nothing but my friend. And you said I'm trying to stay on the straight and narrow. Back then you was like really trying to work and do right and everything, and she was driving you crazy. And you was like, look, I'm about to go south, and I was like, no, hang in there. At that time, when I seen you and you came over there to talk to me about that, I had just prayed that prayer. Any means necessary, Lord, I want out.
You think that was
and when my door got kicked in, that was the answer.
Well, I'm gonna shift the question this way to Sarah. What was, because you talked about your baby situation. What was the most difficult barrier that you faced when you got out?
So when I got out, well, while I was in, I journaled every day, and I made a plan. I had to come up with many scenarios of how would I get in trouble, what would be best for me, where do I want to work, what I'm going to tolerate in a relationship, who do I want to be, and I really just applied that. And of course, you know, I get to work release, and I go through the list of jobs that I could potentially do. I did job training programs while I was in prison, and you know, it always narrowed down to me helping somebody. So ultimately, I knew I wanted to be like a drug treatment counselor. And but then in my head, I'm like, but what kind of job is it gonna take for me not to want to sell drugs again? And I was like, okay, so I need to have 3 jobs. And so I worked, you know, I did all 3 jobs, and then by the time I got into school, I was like, you know, the only way I'd be able to have a child really is if I had to do in vitro fertilization. And so we have to have money to do that. And, you know, by the grace of God, you know, like, you know, when we do decide to do it again, we're in a comfortable enough space that we can. Yeah. But when I got out, I had to I had to work all these jobs so I wouldn't sell drugs. And so I applied my same hustle from the streets that I did to doing hair. So when I was in school, after school, I was doing people's hair on my days off, and out of school, I was doing people's hair all day long.
Yeah.
Even it still applies today. I'll work from 9 o'clock in the morning to midnight on some days. And it's, you know, and it's, yeah, sometimes it's the love of money. Sometimes it's the richness and the relationships that you build with your clients, or even just being here in this space.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So,
That's impactful because you helped me see my situation. A lot of people ask me, why do I, you know, and that's how I was in the street. I was making everybody pocket fat. You know what I'm saying? So when I got in business, I said to myself, well, if I could apply just a little bit of that energy that I was giving everybody else into them drugs all of these years to my situation, and I became happy with that space. So I guess that's my new drug I'm addicted to. So.
And see, my thing is, a lot of people always would talk to me about chasing money. And my thing was, no, I'm not gonna chase money, I'm gonna let money chase me. Because that was my hang up right there, was me out there chasing money and chasing dough. And that was my commitment to God, was that I would not be chasing money. But money always come to me. It has always come to me easily because I give so freely to people. I'm a giver by heart and nature. Even in my addiction, I was a giver by nature. So for me, it was about getting my morals together, you know, hanging around certain people and stop hanging around certain people, learning who to hang with and who not to be a part of or a part of your life. Not because I had anything against them, but because I knew that they were still in the same mind frame. And my mind wasn't there anymore. I needed to find something to do that was going to be productive for my life and be an example for my kids, so that they would finally get it, like, hey, we don't have to follow in my mom's footsteps. We don't have to do what she's doing. We see what she's doing and decide that they want to take this route, the route that I'm taking now. And I've always been in the service and helping business. I've done a lot of volunteer work and all that stuff in my lifetime. And so for the job that I have right now, I'm passionate about that job because I like working with people. I like talking to people. I like helping people. I like empowering them, all that. That's just my thing.
Well, I kind of see some similarities to all of us as well in how we operate and how we navigate. And I think a big part of that comes from, when you have been to a space where you have had nothing, you know what that's like.
Absolutely.
And you don't want to see nobody else in that space if you can have it. I kind of got involved in what I'm doing because I saw when I started making money, it didn't feel like success to me when everybody around me was broke.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
I wouldn't feel entitled like that. So, moving on to this last question, if you had to give somebody that was just, because we all know somebody in our families, and that's why we having this discussion, because we all know somebody in our family or that we connected to that keep getting in trouble, that keep going in and out of jail. I don't care how much money you got, I don't care how entitled you think you are, you connected to somebody that's keep happening to. So we're here trying to figure out what one piece of advice could we give a person, male, female, or whatever it is. If you had to give that advice to them, what would that be? They're about to get out next week. What can you tell them? Because this world traveling so fast, and the social adaptation that's required to not get caught up again in recidivism. You know, they set you up to come back already because they got a word for it, right?
Well, one thing I would definitely tell them is find out where the resources is and find out people that have been through what they've been through. Like, try to find these people or these spaces where people are doing resourceful things. You know what I'm saying? Because if you hook up in a community, it's like the people that I work with in addiction. Now, the courts send them there to get the help from me as a counselor or from the organization. But what good is that if they don't have a place to lay their head, a place that they, clothes to wear on their back, money or food, or, the barriers. There's a lot of barriers that people face coming out of prison and also in addiction. Barriers, period. They need to find the resources. Find out where the resources is and where people are really doing some community stuff and get involved in the community. And they also need to understand that use that, what they learned in there, as a stepping stone. Use that as a stepping stone.
Absolutely. How about you, Sarah?
I'd say the same thing. I'd tell them to just come here. This is where all the networking. I mean, we have clients here that, are drug treatment counselors that live in Oxford or clean and sober living. We have all types of people where this is it. Like, I notice that when a lot of people do get out, they come here or they reach out to people in our support network. And, networking is huge. If you networked on the street, you can network in recovery.
Well, for me, I would say, and I'm going to speak to men, particularly black men, because that's what I am. I would, when we in those positions in them prisons, and they sending us to them work jobs, paying $1.66 an hour. We are proud. You guys, most of y'all up there with y'all jeans pressed. You got the mind to get up and do that work.
Yeah.
And I think you just alluded to it, opportunities are vast. Don't get out here talking about I'm not working for $16 an hour.
Absolutely.
Don't do that. Don't put your entitlement in place. Get out here and get you a job. Get you up. There's plenty of them out here.
Absolutely.
You ain't got time to lay up. Don't nobody owe you nothing because you got out, man. As men, we have to hold ourselves accountable. Absolutely. And that's what I offer.
Absolutely.
And that's real. Speak for women.
You hit on something right there. Is about people tripping about how much you gonna pay me to do some work, and you just got through working, and you talking about $1. When I was in, it was 42 cents an hour that I worked for, and you're right. Don't worry about that. The job that I'm working for now, I was not making that much money when I went in, and I found out later on that a lot of people was making more money than me, but that wasn't the thing. I was on a whole nother mission in my life. And money wasn't it. It was about getting myself together. Absolutely. And also being helpful and useful to my community in which I sucked and took from myself. Absolutely. And I had to make those necessary changes. And one of them was not to let money be the thing that made me, make certain type of choices in my life. It's money. We need money. We need as much money as we can get so we can be helpful and useful to this world around us. But I'm talking about selfish wise or self-serving wise. That's not my thing. Because like you just said earlier, what's the sense of me having a bunch of money in my pocket and my friend sitting next to me broke and hungry? Yeah.
Well, that's our show for today. I hope it's been impactful for somebody. We'd actually like to ask you to continue to support us. Continue to like, share, and subscribe. You can find us on YouTube at the Post Prison Podcast. Also check out our Facebook page. A lot of y'all know us. We'll be putting out different content. And we just thank you. We won't be having a show next week for Christmas. We're going to fall back and reassess where we at. But the intention is to come back strong January 1st. And we're going to shift in direction to a new kind of prison. We're going to talk about the prison of religion versus spirituality. And I got a couple impactful special guests that y'all will be surprised we won't be on. But I'm not going to pre-announce it. So looking forward to seeing you guys in 2 weeks. Have a Merry Christmas. Have a Happy New Year.
Every morning I wake up, all I know is get it. The OGs always told me what I start, I gotta finish. So I push it to the limit, so I can be the greatest. So I can look my family in their eyes and say we made it. Don't let life hand you nothing, you just gotta go take it. Always keep it 100, don't ever let me catch you faking. Keep a close eye on your circle.